this place real? That depends. If real is what you can feel, smell, taste, and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. Pikachu, I have in my hand 2 pills. You take the blue pill, and the story ends now. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the Diglett hole goes. But be warned, dive too deep, and you may never return.
The changes I'm hoping for, but who knows?
Well, what I would be hoping for, it'd be interesting if they brought back. See, there is enough people for like. Well, I guess it's kind of like. It'd be interesting they brought back Topps Chrome for basketball. That'd be very interesting, and it'd probably be very exciting. And they had a few premier or main mid-tier sets, and then yeah, I guess I am trying to get interested because I don't think people are really gonna have much leverage over Fanatics, and they'll probably consult certain people and certain content creators of what to do. But I think in the end of the day, I think people are gonna have to figure out how to thrive despite these monopolies. And I think generally speaking, monopolies, because I think this happened in the 90s too, really aren't that great for the hobby. Because now you don't have competition, and then one of the issues with monopolies, they could just like put out on anything because there's demand, and it doesn't have to be that great of quality and things such as that.
So I wonder why it's that way now. I remember when I was a kid collecting cards, there was a lot of different brands that had the licenses for the different sports. You could get the Upper Deck, you could get the Sky. I mean, I think over time when the hobby did crash, I think what happened is they kind of had to consolidate, and they kind of all came under like one umbrella sort of thing. But I remember, thinking when I was a kid, there were certain like low end cards like Stadium Club that had like really cool photos. Like they were super cheap, $2 a pack, but the photos were really nice. And there were certain cards, some of the inserts just looked phenomenal. And I loved collecting those cards. And then you had, different brands, and they all kind of competed against each other. And I feel like it was a healthier kind of environment when you have a variety of people competing with each other.
Yeah, it is healthier. I think one of the things that people are gonna have to do, if they come out with like crappy products, or it's like I think for most people, when they come out with something new, even if they come out with first off the line stuff, you may be better off just waiting. Waiting, people are gonna make content on it, review it, and you're gonna kind of get a feel of if there's something actually worth it or not. And then try to go watch the people who review this stuff who are more in the middle, instead of the people who are like always pumping and stuff like that. Because obviously unless if you want to do that, watch people who are always pumping, and then go watch a channel that's like always critical. Just because like, so you can kind of get an idea of like what's actually going on. Just because we've seen it before, when products first come out, they're extremely expensive, and then they basically tank in price, and they actually become more affordable for people. And then I think there's other things like knowing when the releases are, seeing what the card designs look like, looking at the checklist. I think it's going to have to be more of a proactive thing for collectors and certain investors as well. Just because it's like it's one of those things where you have to, I feel like you have to kind of look at it as like Fanatics is trying to make money off of you. And if you have a great experience, fantastic, but that's like the second thing. their first thing is they're getting money
Especially in a
from
monopoly setting, you know, that's especially the second thing.
so it's one of those things where I think people are gonna have to be smarter, do their own research,
Yeah.
go off the cards that they actually like, or look nice to them and have like a nice aesthetic. If you're trying to invest in stuff, I think it's just willing to wait, just because like the demand is gonna change. Like the thing that's hot right now won't be in the future.
Yeah. Let's look through a few of these comments. We've got a few comments. Some of them I'll go through quickly, but there's a few in here that I wanted to look at closer. So that some people were sharing some about their thoughts, Nor being a nice set, Origins being underappreciated, which I absolutely agree with. Origins is, as far as like visual appeal, I really love Origins. I think it's really cool. This comment was kind of funny here. This one says, if the feds print some more dollars, we might be happy that we have all those 1 ounce silver bars in the cards. That'll be the most valuable part of the card. It actually has some intrinsic value, like that one.
For the 1 ounce silver bars, like are those actual 1 ounce silver bars? Because
you can't. Yeah, I forgot what product it's in, but yeah, there's actual silver. There's actual silver inside certain cards. I can't remember. Maybe you can mention. Was that David? Yeah, if you remember what that set was, I can't recall offhand. But yeah, there's some sets that have the silver bars embedded inside.
I think I've seen Eminence have that, but I was like, I've seen gold too, and it's like 1 ounce gold, and I'm like, the card is selling for $500, and a 1 ounce of gold is $2,000, and I'm like, this seems like a trick. Like,
that's funny. You know, that's the like with the little ones that have the gems embedded in them, like, you know, the ruby diamonds or rubies or whatever. I think Flawless does that sometimes. You know, most of those are all like made in. They're not natural diamonds. They're made in a lab, you know, where they can make them, and they're officially diamonds. I mean, they have the same DNA, the same like makeup of an actual diamond, but they're made inside of a lab to be able to put into these cards. So it lowers the cost for sure. SP123 says Impeccable has the silver bars. Yeah, that's right. Impeccable has silver bars in them. It's a really cool looking card too.
Interesting. I think I have remember seeing them. The Impeccable cards I've gone after are like more RPA type of Impeccable, or just on card autographs. But yeah, that's interesting.
Here's another Hobby Champ said, you know, when he mentioned this comment back when we were talking about kind of the nature of the last couple of years, but this is an interesting one when he said a lot of poker players have entered the hobby over the past couple of years, but it's kind of like the cyclical thing, you know. So some people, when there's a hype, when there's something going on in the market, like you get a bunch of people who are in there for a specific motivation, and then kind of cycles out. They kind of lose their interest when they can't, you know, be doing something, you know, big money. And I think that's natural. I think that's probably happened at times in the hobby. So it's good to just understand the cyclical nature of the hobby.
Yeah, the nature is very cyclical. Yeah, like, you know, I'm like doing research in a decision-making lab
right,
for neuroscience. Like I'm coming up with like some projects. And one of the things I checked, you know, there's like the psychology cycle of investing or whatever. And I think you have like the smart money, and eventually like the dumb money comes in, and you have like the media hype, and then you have this massive bubble. I'm pretty sure sports cards, and I made a video about it, but like the sports cards have gone through a similar cycle. You can look at 1929 stocks, Bitcoin, like all the bubbles that are like happened. And I do think what's been happening of like, I guess we were going to talk about this last, but like, I guess we can go into it now, like kind of like the decline of like a lot of high end stuff that's continuing to go down. The reason why people were successfully able to predict that is because you kind of look at, you don't know when it's going to happen, but you can kind of see the pattern in a sense. And yeah, I think a lot of people are kind of still surprised in a sense, where if you just looked at it and you kind of applied it, you will see it's like, yeah, things would come down to this point, and it's probably going to come down even more because I don't know exactly what period, but I think most of the stuff, except I don't know 1 to 3% of the cards, are probably going to go back to what 2019 prices were, and then you have a small bunch that are actually above that.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, it makes sense, you know, for it to reach a position closer to what it was. You know, if you take out if you look at graphs and charts and you just take out that crazy spike period, it's just looks like it's just been a continuation of what it's always kind of like. You know, there's
Yeah.
always certain periods of time where there's certain players who go up and certain players who go down, but generally there's like this, you know, not exactly, you can't like expect, there's no specific expectation, you can't know what's going to happen, but from an overarching sense, there's just a general gradual stuff. So it does seem to be going back to that, which for me, I prefer it that way. I don't like them. I don't like a sports card market that is so wild. You know, I'd like to kind of like know what's going on to for there to be at least some logic behind what's happening, like for me to understand it, you know, from that angle. I know that there's, you know, how Ziggy always says, you know, it's sports cards is Ferengi, not what's Spock again? Oh man, that's my Star Trek vocabulary is gone. But it's very emotional. It's not logical so much, and it is, you know. But at the same time, I feel like, you know, if we're getting back to something that's a little bit more, a little bit less manic, it's better. You know, I feel it's a more enjoyable engagement with the hobby when you kind of can at least get some sense of what might possibly happen. You know, at least some degree.
I think the probably the better period will probably be like 2019 and probably most of 2019. Even the end of 2019, things were kind of getting a little crazy, but it was still like controlled. I mean, I guess Luka was kind of going crazy, but Luka kind of makes sense to me. You know, you can argue Trae Young, but like, you know, someone like Luka kind of makes sense. And then maybe January 2020, right before this dual LeBron Michael Jordan card sold for like $900,000, and Gary Vee was like, I told you to buy sports cards, because that's when things first went crazy. And then you had the lockdown, which a lot of stuff crashed unless you were selling on PWCC or Probstein. Stuff wasn't selling for what it was before, and then it started going up again. So I think probably before the pandemic and probably before that crazy sale, it is a good sweet spot if you want a really active market. But it's still a bit crazy to me. I just think a lot of people aren't doing as much on sports cards, and they kind of moved on to others like Marvel PMGs. Like, I think most people kind of knew that was going to be like a train wreck.
Yeah. And it seems inevitable. I mean, because it seems like with something like Marvel, you know, it seems like Marvel has always been just it's been a collector's, you know, the value in that space has never been the key part of that part of the hobby. It's always been about the collecting aspect of it. And sports cards also, but sports cards have been interspersed with the kind of prospecting a lot, and interspersed with you know, like different elements of gambling at time, or different elements of different kinds of mindsets. So sports cards have been a little bit all over the place through the years, but Marvel has always been just kind of a collector's space of people who are interested in that universe. And I think it only makes sense that that's where it will remain. You know, it's not a space. You can't prospect on a Marvel character. It's weird to think of it that way. You know, it's like,
yeah,
they're fictional characters. Are you prospecting on, you know, some businessman who's deciding whether to release a movie in 2 years? Like, it feels like a weird space to be able to be thinking about like prospecting and stuff like that. And even PMGs, you know, the whole hype of PMGs in the Marvel world was a bleed over from the hype of PMGs in sports cards. And it wasn't necessarily like, it's not a Marvel thing. Like, it seems like the people who are interested in Marvel PMGs tend to be sports card people that kind of like went over there for a period of time.
Yeah,
but it's not really like rooted in the Marvel universe so much.
Yeah, I think stuff like, say, you know, comic books, Marvel, DC stuff, I think it's more of a comic book thing. And I really want to say it's a generational thing for that stuff. Like, yeah, it's been popularized because of movies, which is great. And you still probably have some new collectors and people want to come in. But stuff with like Marvel, I think more baby boomers and Gen X, like later Gen X people, are the people that are kind of propping that market up. And those groups of people are probably in the time period of life where they're making the most money they've ever made. So you have that more disposable income. I think when you have newer generations, millennials, Gen Z, it'd be less attractive. They kind of like it because of the movies, but they may just stay with the movies. Some people go into cars, some people go into comic books, but from what I see, there'll be a small percentage of things, I don't know, like that'll be worth money, but for most of that stuff, it's just generation. And I think people need to think about this when they're buying a lot of high-end cards. Just because at one point I need to meet some of these people who are like spending all this money like on a Trey Lance or even Lonzo Ball, like you're spending a bunch of money on like Alonzo Ball car, and he may be a Hall of Famer, but like there's a bunch of Hall of Famers people don't care about. So it's like one of those things where or even,
you mean Lonzo Ball or LaMelo Ball?
Oh, both technically, because at one point
Both,
people
yeah.
were going crazy for Lonzo Ball, and people were like, "Yeah, I spent like tens of thousands of dollars on Lonzo Ball cars." Like,
Yeah, it's a little hard to see. Like Hobby Champ says here, sometimes logic is a word that doesn't exist in the hobby. It's hard for me to see how that's the right decision. If you're collecting, if you have a personal collection with about a player and you just really love a card, okay, whatever. But yeah, if you're approaching it to try to invest in something, like, yeah, to the risk of something like Trey Lance, where the potential for the floor is still so low and the potential for the ceiling is really very minimal. It's hard to envision what's the mindset, like why are you doing that?